Well, all right. So, yeah, glad to see everyone. Thanks for coming. It's June 5th, weekly governance meeting. Last week we went over Saphir's uh, incentive system draft, which I think was done extremely well. Few things came out of that that we were going to kind of just take a poll on to see what kind of runway the community thinks is necessary. Um, and then kind of look at the community engagement tracker that I had built at the Tangle Treasury. I did check in with Paulo, the lawyer, to see, what would be sort of the cheapest and quickest down and dirty ability to be a nonprofit to give liability protection. And he did say, Edward, that it was, Panama, and then the one that you mentioned, he has done that. And then he said they're both pretty much the cheaper options. I said, which one would you choose? And he said Panama. It's just a little bit easier. And again, that's for a relatively short term. You wouldn't want to really, you know, think long term in one of those jurisdictions because they'll probably change. Um, so two things
Yeah,
happened, which I
interesting.
thought, yeah, yeah, and two things happened from last week, which I thought was really good. Was one, just polling the community of who would be willing to volunteers. We got six developers, which I think is outstanding, and several community supporters. So we have them kind of listed that we know who's going to get, who wants to volunteer when we get active and when we get incentives going. Um, we did the polling on how many years runway should TAN kind of to create a long-term sustainability. We had 1 to 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years plus. Um, came with 39% for 4 years, 26% for 5 years, 14% for 8 years, 12% for 1 to 2 years, and 9% for, I think I did it wrong, but one of them. But the main point is that 4 years was the longest, the most voted, which I think is decent. I mean, I think when you look at it, that, really, if this thing is going to work, it should work by year two. If it's going to work, it's going to work, and it's going to have value for that token. Um, and I would say that, if you look at IOTA, like it by year 2, 3, they knew it would work. They just should have sold some IOTA into diversified portfolio, and not doing so, then basically they took a gamble, and the gamble didn't play out by holding all IOTAs. So I think that was more um, financial management done incorrectly than necessarily um, not planning for the long term. Um, so I think that's two really good things. I think seeing the turnout for the support is outstanding. I did ask, one of the questions brought up from last meeting was, if we're going to give incentives, what token would that be? Would that be a BSC token? How could that be the mainnet token prior to network launch? I brought that up, and I asked Garrett that, and he said it's a good question. The BSC one is the one people can sell, but the liquidity is really poor. So, until the bridge is set up, there probably won't be much liquidity. The way to solve this problem is probably either do like another raise to add more liquidity, or come up with some other method. Um, we could also kind of do a token lock in a sense. So I don't know, I'm curious what people's thoughts are on that. Like, you know, if we follow this incentive draft, and we have someone that's, people are going to take these positions, um, some of the project leads here, coming up with these formulas and incentives and the governance, you know, would another funding round be better, and give those individuals and, developers that are going to get active BSC tokens, or kind of put it on a, some sort of recorded method, and then when the launch goes, those are divvied out to those individuals. Let's see here. I think there's on a trade. How many years are short term? I think Bill Poster was talking about that with the setting up a Panamanian or other entity. To me, short term is 1 to 2 years. To me, that's a short term lookout, and that's really going to show: does this thing get off the ground? Does the token gain some value enough to really build something, to get on exchanges, to work with market makers, to really get this to the next level. And then I think if it goes to the next level, then it's time to go to something more established, like the Marshall Islands or, you know, others at that point. Paulo did say that they are coming through with new, I think it's the European crypto regulation pretty soon. So that's probably going to change things. It's also probably going to change things for these other jurisdictions, such as Panama, BVI, etc., that there may be more entities looking to form there. So, might be more demand. So then all of a sudden the price goes up on certain ones, etc. There might be also part of that regulation that sort of may make it more difficult for people setting up in those regions. So, and that should be coming, I think, in the next year or two, basically. I would say year, but everything takes long when it comes to European regulations. But yeah, I think that's a decision of, do we want to give incentives on the BSC tokens or do another funding round or try to just record how much people are earning and then issue those out once the network launches, which is ultimately, somewhat difficult in that incentive aspect, because the question is, does someone only want to do work if they're going to get sort of a USD, not always say USD, but a monetary value associated with those tokens, in the sense that I'm a developer, I should be making $100 an hour, but that's really hard to judge if there's no real set price for the TAN token. Though I think if, following Saphir's kind of incentive plan, coming up with that total distribution and then breaking that down into 48 months, that's a substantial amount of tokens being allocated in the beginning. If you broke that down into, let's say, per quarter or per month, then, ideally there's only going to be so many people supporting in the beginning. They're going to get a bigger chunk of the tokens. And that's really, I think, what his experience was with looking at other incentive programs, is that the ones that really were just ultimately working for the development of the community and the network wasn't really getting anything because the token was worthless at that time. But once it got taken off and then it succeeded, well, they did great, of course. So I think that's the sort of risk reward, right? There's higher risk in the beginning to put effort and time into it. You get these tokens that are basically worthless, and you're taking a risk that, they will be worth something in the future. So I think, and I don't think there was much discussion on this, but I think the first step for his draft was, if I remember correctly, it's getting sort of a project lead for the technical aspect, coming up with a token allocation, and then creating the bounty board for the technical aspect. So, I think what we could do is basically create a posting. Who would want to take that project lead position? Maybe we discuss openly in the channels of how much we think we can be allocated to that, and then see who wants to apply, and kind of see if someone wants to take that and run with it. Again, I really like the reputation system, and kind of something as an example that I did with the community empowerment program was, you know, do we sort of pay influencers, or can we also support our own community um, influencers? And at the time, I created basically a spreadsheet. This was all the front end, and then the back end was basically an Airtable. And it would take, each post, how much impressions, what was the engagement rate? That's just done on a formula. Total likes, retweets, and comments, etc. And based on each of these values and type of post was basically an algorithm that came up with XP points. So, and it took a couple times to try to balance it out where, hey, someone could tweet 20 times, but if someone did a 5-second video on YouTube, the videos were weighted, of course, much stronger than simply a tweet. But we got to a point where it barely was balanced out, and there was one or two people that kind of tried to game it, and then we adjusted the algorithm, and then it was harder for them to game. And then, you can have some metrics showing basically who was getting the largest amount of XP points. And then based on the XP points, the token was allocated, Shimmer tokens. All of this was done through an online web form. So the individuals had to put their information. And then basically it was just the community who could simply take a post from the link and verify it. And it worked pretty good because if someone was, seemed like they were getting a ton of XP points, then people would check, are they not putting in the correct numbers, etc. So it created this sort of decentralized, self-governing, self-watching system. And I think we can do this, and the vision was to do this with not just an online kind of influencer marketing within the community, but also GitHub comments, activity, Discord posts, moderators, et cetera, adding all these points, creating XP points, which is also can be considered a reputation score, which the reputation score can then be